Picture this. In the heart of rural America, hidden deep in the Appalachian hills, there's a family whose story will freeze you in your tracks. A family so secretive, so unsettling, that when outsiders first met them, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. This isn't just a story about poverty. It's a chilling portrait of what happens when isolation twists into something darker. And once you know their name, you'll never forget it. The Whitakers. Picture this. You find yourself driving deeper into the Appalachian hills, where paved roads surrender to dirt and the forest presses in like a dark curtain. Every turn feels heavier until you see a house that time forgot. It leans against the earth like an exhausted traveler, its porch sagging, windows clouded, and silence draped across the yard. But the true weight of the place isn't in the wood or stone. It's in the people. The Whitakers. A name that stirs fascination, fear, and disbelief. Neighbors whisper it in lowered voices. Outsiders hear it in rumors. To many, they are more myth than reality, a ghost family hiding in plain sight. When outsiders finally arrive, the encounter is unsettling. A figure stares blankly. Another barks instead of speaking. The silence feels thicker, broken only by sounds that seem human yet strangely unfamiliar. You realize normal language isn't the rule here. Generations of isolation have shaped them. Poverty kept them apart, geography kept them hidden, and bloodlines folded inward until family became the only world they knew. A survival strategy at first, but over time, a shadowy legacy. The Whitakers are not monsters, though the first impression might tempt you to believe otherwise. Behind the barking, behind the strangeness, are faces marked with exhaustion and resilience. They are human beings who never had choices others take for granted. Their story begins with isolation so deep that schools, doctors, even neighbors became distant memories. A valley within a valley. A place where survival depended on one another, no matter how close the ties already were. Each generation bound tighter to the last. Cousins married cousins, siblings sometimes crossed lines whispered about but never spoken aloud. What started as survival grew into something else, a cycle, a curse depending on how you look. When documentary cameras first arrived, the footage shocked the world. Viewers weren't prepared for what they saw. Nonverbal communication, eyes that darted, laughter and barking blending together. It felt like stepping into another century, another civilization entirely. And yet, if you look closer, you notice something unsettlingly familiar. A family eating together, sitting on a porch, laughing at moments only they understand. Strip away the strangeness, and the essence of family is still there. The horror isn't in who they are. It's in how society abandoned them, left behind by schools, by towns, by systems that chose not to see. Forgotten Americans pushed so far aside they became shadows of themselves. The Whitakers live in a paradox, feared and pitied, studied and mocked. Some who visit leave shaking, disturbed by what they witnessed. Others leave haunted with empathy, wondering what choices they would have made in such isolation. Inside their home, walls close in, old furniture, scattered clothes, air heavy with the musk of survival. No polished comforts, only remnants of lives lived day by day without the luxury of imagining a future. Still, there are smiles, laughter that bubbles in bursts, sounds that confuse outsiders but hold meaning here, small moments of warmth, shared glances, gestures only family would understand. In a world of judgment, they have only each other, but the haunting question remains. Are the Whitakers victims of circumstance, or the embodiment of something society refuses to acknowledge? A chilling reminder of what happens when poverty, isolation, and neglect converge over generations. The house becomes a stage, the family its actors, the visitors its audience. Yet the performance isn't chosen. It's survival laid bare. misunderstood and distorted into spectacle by those who watch with curiosity instead of compassion. Their story lingers not because it is grotesque, but because it unsettles our sense of comfort. The Whitakers are a mirror reflecting a truth many don't want to see, that abandonment breeds monsters, not bloodlines alone. So when you leave the valley, the image follows you. A sagging porch, eyes that speak louder than words, voices that never formed into language, and you wonder who truly failed here, the family or the world outside. Picture this. You're driving through West Virginia back roads where asphalt crumbles into dirt, and trees lean so close they blot out the sun. Silence presses heavy until a sagging house rises like a forgotten monument. Its windows are clouded, porch collapsing, paint stripped away by years of rain. The structure breathes decay, but the true chill lies not in the boards or beams. It's in the family waiting inside. The Whitakers, a name murmured with disbelief and fascination. To locals, they're both myth and warning. Outsiders come chasing rumors, but none truly expect what they'll see. A living secret, isolated in plain sight. The first encounter is surreal. A figure steps forward, wide-eyed, silent. Another barks, sharp and guttural, startling in its rawness. Communication here is not language as you know it. It's something stranger, something animalistic. The air feels thick. Shadows cling to the house, and silence crackles between bursts of barking, muttered phrases, awkward laughter. You realize with unease that you've stepped into another world, one that shouldn't exist anymore. Generations of isolation shaped this family. Poverty kept them apart, geography kept them hidden, and bloodlines folded inward until identity blurred. At first, survival, later habit, finally curse. This is how the Whitakers came to be. But these are not monsters. Behind every strange sound, behind each unsettling glance, lies humanity hardened by neglect. They are people who never had choices others take for granted, trapped in cycles deeper than any outsider understands. The valley itself guards their secret. Roads twist endlessly, houses vanish, and neighbors live miles apart. Schools, doctors, and jobs slipped further away each generation. The Whitakers remained, tied to the land and to each other. What outsiders label grotesque, insiders once called survival. Cousins married cousins, siblings blurred boundaries. It was unspoken necessity, the only way to ensure continuity in a world where escape routes had long been erased. The first documentary cameras captured what words could not describe. Viewers gasped at nonverbal sounds, stares that drifted, bodies rocking, laughter sudden and barking loud. It felt like crossing into another century, another species of humanity. And yet, look closely. A family eats together, sits on a porch, shares glances only they understand. Strip away the strangeness, and a familiar pattern emerges. Beneath the silence and confusion, they are still undeniably family. The tragedy isn't in who they are, but in how society abandoned them. Forgotten by institutions, dismissed by communities, ignored until they became legend. They are the shadow proof of America's willingness to look away. Inside their home, the air is heavy with musk and dust. Furniture sags with age, clutter piles high, and the smell of damp earth seeps through cracked boards. Every object whispers decades of survival, not comfort. Yet, amid the decay, laughter erupts. Gestures and sounds carry meanings only they comprehend. To outsiders, it unsettles, but here, it's communication. Bonds formed without words, ties of blood and silence stronger than language itself. Those who visit leave divided. Some recoil, haunted by barking voices and empty stares. Others feel the weight of compassion, realizing these lives reflect abandonment, not choice. They are unsettling not for who they are, but why. The house becomes both prison and theater. Visitors gaze with curiosity, The family sits exposed like unwilling actors. Their lives are misread as spectacle, when in truth, they are only survival laid bare for strangers' eyes. And the haunting truth lingers. The Whitakers are not anomalies born of horror stories. They are reminders of neglect, of poverty festering unchallenged. They reveal how isolation can sculpt something both tragic and deeply human. So when you finally leave the valley, the images cling to you. The sagging porch, barking voices, eyes that pierce with quiet sorrow. And you wonder, who truly failed? The family or the world outside? Long before the Whitakers became a name whispered across America, their story was already unfolding in the hills of Appalachia, a place where valleys swallowed secrets and roads dissolved into dirt long before reaching their homes. Isolation was both shield and curse. The mountains guarded them from outsiders, but also cut them off from opportunity. Poverty settled like fog, clinging to generations, and choices narrowed until family became the only constant. The first Whitakers were not infamous, merely invisible. Farmers scraping survival from rocky soil, loggers hauling timber from endless forests, miners descending into black veins beneath the earth. Hard work defined them, but geography trapped them. As the decades passed, neighbors drifted away, towns collapsed, and industries withered. What remained was a family bound tighter and tighter to itself, marriages formed not out of choice, but because no alternatives existed in reach. Whispers grew in nearby communities, cousins marrying cousins, bloodlines repeating themselves until faces resembled echoes of earlier generations. Yet no one intervened, no schools came, no officials cared. Isolation ensured the cycle continued, hidden in plain sight. For the Whitakers, survival meant clinging together. Strangers rarely ventured into the valley, and when they did, suspicion met them. Families like this did not rely on outsiders. They relied only on kin, however close. Stories passed through generations like heirlooms. Some tales spoke of hardship, winters without heat, summers when crops failed, illnesses endured without medicine. Others carried darker undertones, unspoken acknowledgments of bonds forged too tightly within the bloodline. But how many generations deep does this lineage twist? No one can say. Records are scarce, names lost, marriages unregistered. Oral histories blur fact and fiction, leaving behind shadows of a family tree bent upon itself. The Whitakers became their own world. Births celebrated without midwives, deaths mourned without clergy, lives marked by the seasons, not calendars. Their lineage drifted further from outside memory until they were less people than rumor. To locals, the family became a cautionary tale. Children whispered of a clan hidden in the hills, strange and secret. Adults nodded knowingly, but rarely ventured close. Fear and fascination grew in equal measure. And yet, behind the whispers lay human beings. They were not myths, not monsters, but individuals shaped by generations of neglect. They laughed, wept, and endured, even as the world beyond chose to forget them. Isolation hardened into identity. The Whitakers' home became more than shelter. It was a fortress against judgment, a stage for survival. Every plank of wood, every sagging wall held decades of untold history within. Bloodlines folded back upon themselves, but so did memory. With each generation, the family became both more insular and more mysterious. Outsiders could only speculate, while the truth lived quietly inside their hidden valley. When first confronted by cameras, their existence shocked the world. But to the Whitakers, nothing seemed unusual. This was their life, their origin, their inheritance. What outsiders saw as grotesque, they recognized as ordinary continuity. The tragedy lies not in the family alone, but in abandonment. Society left them here, unseen and unsupported, until cycles turned inward. Their origins are not merely a tale of inbreeding, but a portrait of neglect. Generations blurred into one another, faces carrying familiar echoes. Survival was measured not in progress, but in endurance. To the Whitakers, their way was not scandalous. It was simply the only way left. And so their origins remain both mystery and mirror. Mystery, because no one knows how far back the ties fold. Mirror, because they reveal what happens when poverty and isolation are ignored for far too long. The valley still holds their history, whispering it through broken boards and worn earth. A family's origin story, twisted by circumstance and neglect, yet carried forward with resilience that defies erasure, forgotten yet unforgettable. When you first meet the Whitakers, your instinct might be to recoil. The barking, the silence, the unsettling sounds seem to mark them as otherworldly. Yet if you pause, another truth begins to surface. Look closer, and you'll notice small gestures of tenderness. A hand placed gently on a shoulder, laughter breaking through the strangeness, warm and genuine. In those fleeting moments, humanity burns brighter than the silence. Children who never learned formal language still communicate with surprising depth. They point, they gesture, they bark, but within the family, meaning flows easily. Outsiders may see chaos, but inside, it is fluency born of necessity. Around their home, daily life carries on in quiet patterns. A pot simmers on the stove. Dogs wander freely, part guardians, part companions. The rhythm may feel unfamiliar, but it is still undeniably human. Laughter comes often, though it sounds different. Bursts of sound, harsh to outsiders, echo with joy inside the walls. These are not just noises, they are expressions of connection, jokes only family members fully understand. You see resilience everywhere. Old clothes patched and worn, shoes passed down until they barely hold together, meals stretched with creativity. Poverty dictates limits, yet within those limits, the Whitakers persist with a quiet kind of ingenuity. Compassion also flows in unexpected ways. When one member falters, others rally. Barking turns to comforting touches, laughter softens tension, silence gives space. In a world without outsiders, family becomes both safety net and lifeline. Even moments of stillness reveal intimacy. Sitting together on a sagging porch, their eyes dart to one another, sharing unspoken thoughts. A glance can carry more weight than words, holding stories outsiders will never hear. What unsettles outsiders is not simply the strangeness, but the reflection. Strip away language and education, and you are left with the bare essence of family, flawed, protective, sometimes chaotic, yet still bound by love. It is tempting to label them as victims or curiosities, but such words flatten the complexity of their lives. They are survivors of circumstances none of us would willingly choose, enduring where others might collapse. The Whitakers do not ask for pity. Their laughter resists it, their gestures reject it, their very survival denies it. What they ask, without ever speaking, is recognition that their humanity still matters. When visitors bring food, clothing, or simple kindness, gratitude shines through. Smiles emerge, eyes brighten, hands reach eagerly. For a moment, barriers collapse, and you see not strangeness but joy, unfiltered and sincere. Some might see only deformity or dysfunction. But look deeper, and you'll find faces weathered by hardship, yet softened by affection. Their humanity is not erased by circumstance. It simply wears a mask shaped by survival. The world often treats them as spectacle, but within the family, dignity remains. Their bonds are unbreakable, formed not by choice, but by necessity. In that necessity lies strength, a resilience forged in isolation's fire. They are not blind to judgment. Even without words, they sense the way outsiders stare. And yet they meet those stares with unflinching presence, as though daring the world to see them fully, not partially. Here lies the paradox. The same family outsiders find disturbing can also evoke deep empathy. Their lives challenge us to confront uncomfortable truths about poverty, neglect, and the resilience of the human spirit when abandoned. The Whitakers embody survival in its rawest form. They laugh, they cry, they comfort one another. Behind every unsettling sound lies a story of endurance, a reminder that even in the darkest corners, humanity persists. And when you leave their home, one thought lingers. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't how different they are, but how familiar. A family, imperfect and scarred, surviving together in a world that long ago left them behind. The story of the Whitakers does not end at their doorstep. Once cameras captured their lives, their existence spilled beyond the valley, rippling outward into living rooms, documentaries, and endless conversations across the world. What had been whispered rumors became undeniable reality. Viewers stared in disbelief, some recoiling, others captivated. The footage spread quickly, drawing millions who debated not only the family's life, but what it revealed about society. Reactions were divided. Some saw grotesque curiosity, a spectacle to be consumed. Others felt a pang of sorrow, recognizing poverty and abandonment etched into every corner of their lives. Judgment and empathy wrestled for dominance. The Whitakers became more than a family. They became a mirror reflecting uncomfortable truths. Isolation, poverty, and neglect shaped them, yet people preferred to marvel at strangeness rather than ask why they had been forgotten. Documentaries gave them visibility, but also exposure. Strangers arrived with cameras, donations, and curiosity. Some offered help, others sought shock. For the Whitakers, every visit blurred the line between compassion and exploitation, dignity and display. Still, visibility brought survival. Donations of food, clothing, and resources lightened burdens. For once, the world acknowledged them. Yet acknowledgement carried a price. They could never again retreat fully into anonymity. Their lives became legend. Their legacy is complicated. They embody resilience in the face of neglect, yet also serve as cautionary symbols of what happens when generations are left without education, health care, or meaningful contact with the wider world. Outsiders often asked, how could this happen in modern America? But the question carries its own answer. It happened because society turned away, because poverty thrives where eyes refuse to look directly. The Whitakers remind us that isolation is not just geographical, it can be cultural, political, and social. A family hidden in the hills is only possible when the nation decides to leave them there. Even today, their presence sparks debate. Are they evidence of resilience or tragedy? A living relic of neglect or a powerful testament to survival? Their existence refuses simple answers, leaving only paradox in its place. And perhaps that is why their story lingers. They unsettle us because they force recognition, not of freakish difference, but of familiarity, the reminder that abandonment, when deep enough, can distort humanity in ways hard to face. When we look at the Whitakers, we are also looking at ourselves, our failures as a society, our fascination with spectacle, our willingness to consume suffering as entertainment. Their legacy is not theirs alone, it's ours. Yet amid all this, dignity still flickers. Their laughter, their bonds, their unspoken understanding of one another persist. Even if the world casts them as symbols, they remain what they always were, a family surviving. Their home continues to sag under time's weight, yet it stands, a crooked monument to endurance. Visitors come and go, but the Whitakers remain, carrying forward a legacy they never asked to inherit. That legacy is haunting. It asks questions without answers. Why do we look away until tragedy fascinates us? Why do we only remember families like this when they shock us into paying attention? Perhaps the greatest cruelty is not their isolation, but our fascination. To them, life is ordinary. To us, it is unimaginable. The gap between those perspectives defines the gulf between spectacle and understanding. And so the question lingers long after the cameras fade. Are the Whitakers victims of circumstance, or a chilling reminder of what happens when society looks away for too long and forgets its own? Their legacy does not whisper, it echoes, an unsettling truth carved into memory. The Whitakers are not just America's hidden family, they are America's reflection, haunting proof of what neglect can shape when no one intervenes. Before you scroll away, ask yourself this. What you just heard isn't just a story about one family. It's a mirror reflecting poverty, neglect, and the haunting cost of looking away too long. If this story unsettled you, let it, share it, talk about it, and make sure these lives aren't reduced to silence again. And if you want more hidden histories revealed, subscribe now, because stories like this don't just demand to be watched. They demand to be remembered. And the next chapter is already waiting in the shadows.